where the church was, because I do have a niece and a nephew that they have a church. He pastors a church there in Texas, and I'm not sure just exactly where this church was at. Sinking Springs, is that what it was, or something like that? It's some kind of springs anyway, but is the Southern Baptist, pardon? Well, you know, Texas is a big state, and what chance would it be of my nephew being Sterling Spring? Okay, but that's it's sad to think, and you know, we get up on any given day, and we leave the house or we stay in the house, and we don't know what will be our plight. So much can happen in a week's time. And, of course, this is going to make national news, but what a way to make the news, huh? So we need to be praying for them. Tonight we're going to go back to the Old Testament, back to Genesis chapter 42. And we're getting there in the life of Joseph. And as I've told you, this brother I'm going to see him one of these days. I want to meet this man. What a tremendous man he was. But we're not going to talk about Joseph tonight. We're going to talk about his brothers and his daddy. And I've entitled the message, All Things Are Against Me. I just appreciate the song that Charlene has written and sung for us tonight. We need to trust Jesus all the time, folks. And this is not always so in our lives. Look with me at chapter 42, and I'm going to begin reading at verse 22. I'm going to read right on through. I'll stop when I get to verse 10 of chapter 43. Genesis chapter 42, beginning at verse 22. And Reuben answered them, saying, Spake I not unto you, saying, Do not sin against the child, and ye would not hear. Therefore, behold, also his blood is required. And they knew not that Joseph understood them, for he spake unto them by an interpreter. And he turned himself about from them, and wept, and returned to them again, and communed with them, and took from them Simeon, and bound him before their eyes. I want to stop right there and make a comment before I forget it. This is, I think, one of 6 times that you find that Joseph wept. He weeps here before his brethren. He wept whenever he seen his brothers when they were coming, and he wept also when they brought Benjamin down. He wept when he hugged his daddy for the first time in over 20-some years. And he also weeps at his daddy's death. So Joseph shows us that he can cry. And there's nothing wrong with even adult people crying. I think we've got the mentality it's a sissy that cries. And thank God that he has given me some tears to weep. Going back to verse 25, Then Joseph commanded to fill their sacks with corn, and to restore every man's money into his sack, and to give them provision for the way, and thus he did unto them. And they laded their asses with the corn, and departed thence. And as one of them opened the sack to give his ass provender in the inn, he espied his money, for behold, it was in his sack's mouth. And he said unto his brethren, My money is restored, and lo, it is even in my sack. And their hearts failed them, and they were afraid, saying one to another, What is this that God hath done unto us? And they came unto Jacob their father, unto the land of Canaan, and told him all that befell unto them, saying, The man who is the Lord of the land spake roughly to us, and took us for spies of the country. And he said unto them, We are true men. We are no spies. We are 12 brethren, sons of our father. One is not. The youngest is this day with our father in the land of Canaan. And the man, the Lord of the country, said unto us, Hereby shall I know that ye are true men. Leave one of your brethren here with me, and take food for the famine of your household, and be gone. And bring your youngest brother unto me. Then shall I know that ye are no spies, but that ye are true men. So will I deliver you your brother, that is Simeon, and ye shall traffic in the land. And it came to pass, as they emptied their sacks, that behold, every man's bundle of money was in the sack. And when both they and their fathers saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. And Joseph their father said unto them, Me have ye bereaved of my children. Joseph is not, and Simeon is not, and ye will take Benjamin away. All these things are against me. And Reuben spake unto his father, saying, Slay my 2 sons, if I bring him not unto thee. Deliver him into my hand, and I will bring him to thee again. And he said, My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is left alone. If mischief befall him by the way in the which ye go, even shall ye bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave. And the famine was sore in the land. And it came to pass, when they had eaten up the corn which they had brought out of Egypt, their father said unto them, Go again, buy us a little food. And Judah spake unto him, saying, The man did solemnly protest against us, saying, Ye shall not see my face, except your brother be with you. If thou wilt send our brother again with us, we will go down and buy thee food. But if thou wilt not send him, we will not go down. For the man said unto us, Ye shall not see my face, except your brother be with you. And Israel said, Wherefore dealt ye so ill with me, as to tell the man whether ye had yet a brother? And they said, The man asked us straitly of our state and of our kindred, saying, If your father is your father yet alive? Have ye another brother? And we told him according to the tenor of these words. Could we certainly know that he would say, Bring your brother down? And Judah said unto Israel his father, Send the lad with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and thou, and also our little ones. I will be surety for him. Of my hand shalt thou require him. If I bring him not unto thee, and set him before thee, then let me bear the blame forever. For except we had lingered, surely now we had returned the second time. Father, I thank you for the word of God. I thank you that we can be shown mysteries, Father, that surround our own life. We look at this incident in the life of Joseph's brothers, his father, and we can see ourselves so readily. Father, how many times do you have to show us things in our own life to make us see how that we fail to trust you, we fail to believe, we fail you so miserably? And tonight, God, as we begin this message, I want to take time to pray for the families of those of that church there in Texas. What a tragedy. To think that we could live in a country where once it seemed so safe, and today, Father, so many crises, so many tragedies is waiting out in New York for that race to begin to see if there was going to be another terrorist happening there this year. They've worked hard, and then some obscure place out west, and perhaps not even associated with terrorism, but something has triggered another individual to do some dastardly deed is what he has performed. God, we pray for those families now, the deceased. Pray for those that are fighting for their lives. And we ask, God, that you would bless and be with and encourage and help in each and every case. Be with our own church here. Bless us, we pray now. Bless the message, we ask in Christ's name. And amen. In these verses that I've read to you here tonight, look with me again at verse 36 of chapter 22. And Jacob their father said unto them, Me have ye bereaved of my children. Joseph is not, Simeon is not, and ye will take Benjamin away, and all these things are against me. Tonight, how do we look at our life? Is your cup half full, or is it half empty? Do you walk around thinking, if things can go bad, they will? That seems to be the mindset of a lot of people. And I have to take the blame in my own life. Many, many times I border on the being a pessimist. You know, that's one who sees the dark side of life. When things happen, instead of praising God and thanking God, what do? We start questioning God. Why this? Why me, Lord? Jacob always seemed to be living on that side of life, always taking the dark side. Thus, his sons were just like him. The last time we left these boys, or these men now, they were headed back from their brother there in Egypt, and leaving a brother in Egypt in prison, and being a hostage there at the hands of his own brother, whom he did not know. Of course, Joseph knew each one of them. Actually, things were all working to their advantage when you stop and think about it. Let me just share some of them. While they were working for their advantage, they were looking at the bad side of the whole thing. They had grain that they came for. They were loaded up and they were headed home. And they made it home. They also had the money in their pockets that they paid for the grain. It was all there in their sack's mouth. They had food to keep them alive now. They could go on living. They had the money. They had things that were happening that was really, really going well for them. But what were they looking at? They were looking at the negative side of the whole thing. As we look back at verse 28 again, when Joseph said to his brothers, or this one that found the money, he said, My money is restored, and lo, it is even in my sack, and their hearts failed them. Here they had the money, and instead of looking and being happy about it, their hearts failed them, every one of them. They were in a state of shock. Did they know what they were asking when they asked this question in that verse? They answered, What thing hath God done to us? What is this thing that God has done to us? Did they know what they were asking? I'm sure that they didn't. I'm quite sure that they didn't even understand what God was doing in their lives. And do we ever question, what is God doing in my life? About this time last year, yours truly was going through a very difficult time. I spent probably more nights, and Kyra can verify what I'm saying, I probably spent more nights without sleep than I was getting sleep. I would be exhausted. I would go for days without a good night's rest. And what was it? God, what are you doing in my life? I didn't ask for all of this. The church is falling apart. I'm trying to pull it back together. Nobody wants to cooperate. Everybody seems to be against me. And what in the world am I doing, God? If I don't have this church, where am I going? Are we going to Virginia? Are we going over to Kentucky? And we were scouting around wondering what is going to happen. And then it got to the place where I had no choice. God literally took the ministry away from me at Twin Valley. I had to say to the people, it's enough. I can't go on. And I just up and resigned, not knowing where I was going. Little realizing that Madison Baptist Church was waiting for me. You see, we can't see around the next bend in our life. And these brethren, they could not see what God was doing, but God was working, even when it seemed like that he was nowhere to be seen. What is God doing to what's he done to us, they were asking. Well, when we say, what is God doing with them? What is he doing with us? When life becomes a larger challenge than we can see, what is our response? Negative or positive? How do we view our problems? From the horizontal, in other words, do we look out like this at our problems and look around and say, where's the fix? How can I take care of this? What can I do? Who's going to help me? Where am I going from here? And all of the questions that comes up. Or do we just stop, get down on our faces before God? I can't get on my knees anymore since I had my knee operated on. It's hard for me to get down and put any weight on it at all. But can we just stop and look up and start taking the vertical look, looking towards God and where he is? You see, this is important, folks. From the human point, things can be impossible. We all know that, don't we? But Charlene just sang about it. With God, all things are possible. I don't know how many times of late, over the past couple of years, 3 years we've been married, and I probably got this verse read to me by my wife more than any other. For a couple of 3 or 4 months in a row, she was always bringing up Jeremiah 32:27. That's a good verse to get a handle on. And what that verse says is simply, I am the Lord, the God of all flesh. That includes Don Knoll and includes you. Is anything too hard for me? Is there anything too hard for God? With this in mind, is God big enough to work things out in our lives? Can he take care of us? Can he help us when we seem to be helpless? Now, let me give you some points here. First of all, let's follow Joseph's brother as we take him back home, or as we take them back home in these verses 25 down through 29. 9 men, they come back home. They've been gone now for several months. They've been down to Egypt, and they come home to Canaan, and they stop at an inn, and there they got the shock of their lives as they opened up the sacks of their grain. The first one, as he opened up, there was his money. And not only was his there, but every one of them, they opened their sack there at the inn. And you'll read this in verse 35. And when they got home, they told their dad what had happened to them while they were down in Egypt. They tell him that they were treated very, very harshly and sternly with the prime minister there, whom they did not know, by the way, only that he was a mean dude as far as they was concerned. They also explained the absence of Simeon. Here they are, only 9 of them returned. 10 of them went down, 9 of them comes back. Why Joseph kept Simeon, I don't know where he picked him out, or whether they cast lots and the lot fell on Simeon, or maybe Simeon volunteered, I'll stay, you guys go. Remember last time we talked about this? Joseph, first of all, said, I'm going to keep 9 of you and send 1 of you home. And he put them in hold or in prison for 3 days, letting them all see what it's like to be down there in that dungeon. But while they were there, Joseph was probably spending some sleepless nights thinking, now this isn't a good idea. If I send one of those boys back, one of my brothers back, and he gets hijacked or something, and how much food is he going to be able to take back to Dad and the families back home? This isn't a good idea. I'll send 9 of them back, let them take their mules and load them up and get out of here, and I'll keep one of them for a surety and make sure that they come back. Now, how is Jacob, going to respond to all this that they have been telling him? It's quite interesting. Will he look with a positive or a negative mindset? Well, I want you to know that Joseph has been through it. He's no young man. Joseph is well up in years now. He's an old man, and he's experienced many things by the hand of God where God has taken care of him over and over and over again. Reminds me of another fellow by the name of Don. Been here for a long time. And he looks back and he sees all of the good things that God has provided and cared for him with, and yet he sometimes questions God. Jacob should have been trusting God. You see, Jacob has seen God work in many, many mighty ways in the past. His God is big enough, or is he big enough? That's the question. How big is Jacob's God? Well, how big is your God and my God tonight? He's as big as we allow him to be, folks. Is there anything impossible with him? No, there isn't. Not a thing that is impossible. Let me just rephrase that just a little bit. There's nothing that's impossible with God that is right. There is some things that is impossible with God. God cannot lie, and aren't you glad for that? God cannot sin, and I'm glad for that. And there are some, but everything that's right and good, it is in God's power to be God and to care for us. But just listen to Jacob in these verses 36 to 38. When we see him, he comes to he's bereaved of his children. And listen, I'm going to point out some things here. He says, it always bereaves me. It is always me that you, talking to his sons, bereave. Now, what have they done to him? Maybe, just maybe, is Jacob in his mind thinking, listen, Joseph, he just didn't die. We know he brought back evidence that he's gone, he's dead. And Jacob really believed that. But I believe down in his heart there was some questions. Did my sons do this to him? We know how that there was a bitterness, or I know how there's a bitterness between my boys and my son Joseph. Could they be behind his death? Did Jacob suspect? And I just believe that he probably did. And then notice he said, all these things, and this is where I got my title, all these things are against me. And was this true or was it false? And I want to tell you something, it was all false. These things were not against Jacob. All of these things that were happening was working out for Jacob and his family's good. Sometimes we look at things and we wonder and we question. When we got the news, Cindy's the first one that broke it to us. Jenny, her cancer wasn't good. Then we heard from Jenny, and Kyra started texting her and trying to figure out how the two of them can get together so that she wanted Kyra to come, either come to her and pray for her, or her come to Kyra. And Kyra tells me, and then I get involved in this thing wondering, God, why? What's going on here? Why Jenny? We go to prayer. And I remember the prayer that I prayed. God, we get so concerned when somebody gives us bad news and when it looks like that someone's on their way out. And the thing that keeps coming to my mind, and I think about this with my daughter-in-law, we prayed so hard for Donna. Oh, God, please don't take her. She's needed here. My grandson needs a mommy. And I remember talking to Brother Oscar Perry and telling Brother Perry, listen, I don't understand this. It's not right for grandparents to raise their grandchildren. And it's just not a good thing. And I remember what Brother Perry said to me. Sometimes it is the good thing. Sometimes it's the best thing. For what reason God called Donna home, I don't know. But you know, I spent a lot of hours and a lot of time praying for my daughter-in-law. And God didn't seem to hear. I prayed a long time and a lot of time for my wife, and God seemed He didn't hear. I kept praying, God heal, God heal, God heal. And guess what? God did. God gave them both the most perfect healing that they possibly could have had. You know what? When a person goes to heaven and you know they're in heaven, they're far better off than what we are. They're in a better place than what we're at. And sometimes, as I've often said, and it's been called to my attention, if we spend as much time trying to keep people out of hell as we do keeping them out of heaven, we'd be a whole lot better off with our praying. I hope that sinks through. You see, if a person's ready to go, and we keep praying and asking God, please don't take them, that's His business. He can take any one of us, me included, any time that He chooses to do so. And I don't care how many prayers are going up. When my day is at hand for me to leave this earth, I'm going home. And that will be a glorious day. Amen. Let me point out that Jacob should have appreciated what his sons had done. They had made that long trip all the way down to Egypt. Took weeks to get down there and weeks to get back. And they came back carrying all that food that was going to keep them and preserve them here. Instead of saying anything at all about that, all you boys have done have bereaved me and brought trouble into my life. They come back not only with food, but they came back with their money. And why is that we, like Jacob, will take the negative in the way of our thinking and think on the negative side? And I'll tell you why it is. It's because we have been programmed toward defeat. We look, it's not going to be good. Everything that happens to me, it happens in the wrong way, and I don't know what's going on. You see, the big reason is we simply leave God out of the equation. We take Him out of the picture. What Jacob should have done was to call his boys together and say, listen, fellas, we're going down to church, and we're going to get on our faces before God, and we're going to pray about this, and then you boys are going to have to go on down there. And the prime minister said to bring Benjamin, you're going to go with them, and God's going to take care of you, because I'm going to pray that God takes care of you down there and back. That should have been the way it would have happened, but we know that it wasn't. Let's look at Jacob's wrong attitude. In verse 38, look at it again. He said, my son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he's left alone. That is, Benjamin he's left. If mischief befall him by the way in the which ye go, then shall ye bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave. Now let's analyze this for just a few seconds here. First of all, what is seen here is fear and despair on Jacob's part. All he could see was he's going to lose his other son. But there's something else here. I want you to look at, I want you to see this. Careless words on our part sometime can be of great hurt. Notice what Jacob said. Mark this in your Bible because it's there. He said, my son. Now, what he should have said is not my son, but your brother, because Benjamin was their brother, even though he was just a half-brother. But what Jacob was seeing here, just like he's seen with, and got this whole mess in the predicament that it was in, was he was putting Joseph above every one of the others. He made him his favorite son. And he says here, my son shall not go down. And hear him as he overreacts. Joseph is not. You know what he's saying there? Joseph is dead. Now, wait a minute, Jacob. Can't you remember the dream that your son had? He dreamed. Do you believe what he dreamed? He dreamed that not only his 11 brothers are going to come and bow down before him, but his mommy and his daddy is going to bow down too. And I've already pointed out, couldn't have been his mother, so it had to be one of his stepmothers or his stepmothers, because he had several. They're going to have to bow down. Jacob should have known, according to the word of God, that it can't happen the way you're seeing. Joseph is not dead. But he never had it in his mind one time that Joseph was still alive. And then notice something else. He says here, Simeon is not. Is he putting him in the same coffin that he put Joseph in? Is he saying this, that in Jacob's mind, Simeon is dead also? And I will not allow you to take my son Benjamin from me. Well, Jacob is supposed to be the leader of the family. But look at him. He is seeing only on the dark side. He is whining that everything is against him. Now, we've read the end of the book. We know the last chapter. Is everything against him? Was it against him? And the answer is no, 1,000 times no. God is working, Jacob. And God is working, Don. Do you see it? Now, it needs to be pointed out right here that the disarray in this home is steep very low. Reuben, he stepped forward and again he says, Dad, I will make you a deal. Now, here's what I'll do. If you allow me to take Benjamin and go down there, I'll bring him back. And if I don't bring him back, here's the deal, Dad. If I don't bring Benji back with me, you kill my 2 sons. Now, isn't that some kind of a deal? In other words, Dad, if I don't bring them back, kill your grandsons on me. Blame me. Well, that's the stupidest kind of a deal that I've ever heard try to be made. And thank God Jacob wasn't going to take that. He wasn't going to do that. But listen to him. Benjamin must be protected even if the whole family starves to death. That's the attitude that Jacob was taking. Now we read this and we think, I would not have acted like Joseph or Jacob. I would have trusted God. Would we really? What happened last week in my life, in your life, when we really failed to give God all the trust that he was deserving of? Have you ever been guilty of allowing fear and frustration to come upon you? I have to admit that I have been guilty many times, too many times in my own life. Now, the stubborn of Jacob versus the working of God, and I want us to see this. Who do you think is going to win this one? Verses 1 and 2 of chapter 23. And the famine was sore in the land. And it came to pass, when they had eaten up the corn which they had brought out of Egypt, their father said unto them, Go again and buy some more food. Get us something to eat. Well, month after month had come and gone. And after that first time that they had gone, they've used it all up now. And they didn't realize that this is not the end. This is only the beginning. This is not going to rain. There's going to be a famine that's going to continue for several months, even into the years yet. And God's working it all out that you're going to be preserved through somebody that you don't even know that's still alive. Dad, we're out of food. So Jacob said, go buy a little more. Verse 2, God is actually tightening the screws in order to get his way with his family. They didn't know it. And sometimes God tightens the screws on us and we don't recognize it, but he's doing it for a purpose. Judah responds this time, not Reuben. In verses 3 through 5, Judah comes forward. And here's what he says. In verses 3, 4, and 5, Judah spake unto him, saying, the man did solemnly protest unto us, saying, ye shall not see my face, except your brother, that brother that you spoke of back in Palestine, is with you. So don't come without him. And that's what Judah is telling his dad. Now notice how Jacob reacts. He comes back at once and he focuses on himself. Look at verse 6. And Israel said, that's Jacob, wherefore dealt ye so with me as to tell the man whether ye had a brother? How did this come about? Why did you have to open your mouth and let him know that you even had a brother back home? And Jacob's old character is brought forth once again. Here's what he was saying. Why didn't you just lie to him? Why didn't you tell him a lie? Why did you have to come out with the truth? Well, you want to know, it hadn't been written yet, so Jacob couldn't have known, couldn't have read this, but it's been written so that we can know it today. It's never good to tell a lie when the truth is there to be told. Proverbs chapter 12, verse 22 says, lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but they that deal truly are his delight. Poor Jacob. He's still Jacob, isn't he? The surplanter. He's good for his name, a deceiver. Now all the sons joined in verse 7, and they said, not just Judah, they said, the man asked us straightly of our state and of our kindred, saying, is your father yet alive? Have you another brother? And we told him according to the tenor of those words. Could we certainly know that he would say, bring your brother down here? How was we going to know, Dad? You're making a big issue out of this thing. And Dad, we just don't get it. We're trying to be truthful men. Here we are standing in the presence of Pharaoh's right-hand man. And he asked us outright about our brother, about you and our little brother. Now listen, they said, how was we to know? All we done was told him the truth, and they're commended for that. Now, Judah laid it on the line, and he said it this way, we can't go on like we're going. We're all going to die if we don't have some food. And he said, I will take the responsibility for Benjamin. You put him on my account. If anything happens to him, I will bear the consequences for the rest of my life. I like Judah here. He goes on to say, if we hadn't delayed, we would have been coming back now, not just getting ready to go. It's a necessary trip, and we need to go get some food. So let's be out of here. And I must ask, where would we be if we all just trusted our God from day to day and put all of our trust in him? I'm going to stop right here with the story now, but let's think about our own situation, could we, for just a moment? We look at our world, and I know I keep talking about this, but we live in a wicked and a very diverse world today. It seems like it's all falling apart. Our country is on the brink of despair. we sit we concern ourselves, and I will go home and I'll look at the television news tonight and hear and break my heart. But you know what? I'm waiting. If God doesn't act on our part, when's that bomb going to maybe be shot out of North Korea, headed for the United States, that maybe put us into another Korean War? Are we too good for that? I don't think so. The church is powerless today and almost helpless. And I've said this many times over. The church today, and I take my blame, it doesn't have enough power to blow the dust off of a peanut. And you know it and I know it as well. Why? Families are coming unraveled, and we want to scream out, God, where are you? Well, you want to know something tonight? I'm going to tell you where God is. God is right where he has always been. He hasn't moved. He's not the one that has moved. It's us. The church is what's moved in the wrong direction. Our country is moving day by day in the wrong direction. God's right where he's always been. And in reality, we look at it. You tell me what I put up here. Is the cup half full or is it half empty? And I can hear some of you go home and say to those around you tonight, the pastor showed us a cup that's half empty. No, that cup's half full. I come in here tonight, and Carmen and I sat down here. We've been here for an hour before the rest of you got here. But we come here and we sit down there to pray. And I looked up here, and I thought about this. I asked Kim this morning when she's putting that 4 up, I thought she was going to put the 5 up again. And I was all excited. I thought, boy, we're going to get to 50. She put up 46. We look down here, $1,772. We look at the last week's offering. When we sat there and we were praying, and here was my prayer. God, I thank you for 46 people that came this morning. Now, some of us might look at it like we only had 46. No, here's the thing. We had 46. I would have liked to have 56. 66, 76, 106. But thank God for the 46 that we have. That's looking at a half of it, the cup that's half full. We need to look at the positive. And so many times that I am so guilty taking the negative outlook. A few weeks back, we was looking at the offerings, wondering how we're going to struggle through this. Are you as thankful as I am that God is providing and giving us what we need? And he's promised to do that, hasn't he? He didn't say he would give us what we want, but he's given us what we need. And as long as we can pay the bills, as long as we can keep the lights on, as long as we've got a church to come to, as long as we can get up on Sunday morning and come back on Sunday night and Wednesday night and have a place to worship, we ought to be seeing a cup that's half full and not looking at it if it keeps going the other way. Thank God for everything we have. I looked at those children this morning. The buses didn't come in full today, and that's probably one of the reasons why we're down a little bit. But Brother John was the first one that came in tonight to tell me. And then Brother Randy told me. While some of us was going home and taking our afternoon naps, they went out on a little excursion to find a family of 5 people that the children are supposed to be with us next Sunday. Would you pray that they'll come? You know, that's what it's all about. Don't you think for one moment that I don't praise God every week, every day. And Kyra can tell you this. Thank God for 4 men in this church that's going to go out here on Saturday morning and knock on doors and try to get these children to come. What good are they? I'll tell you what good they are. Not just to shoot our number up, but to teach and preach and tell them about Jesus. That's what it's all about. I thank God for Linda and those. I could go around. I went down and followed Cindy down, her and Kyra, as they went downstairs to prepare for those little ones to come in here and have a donut or two on Sunday morning. And I told Cindy, and I'll say it right in front of all of you, I thank God for her faithfulness. She's usually one of the first ones here to church every service. She comes alone. Cindy, I want you to know I'm praying for your husband that he'll come with you one day. And I believe he's going to. And that's what church is all about. Yes, we get these children and we pray for them. I wish I want to tell you this. I didn't mean to, but I'm going to tell you this. Kyra and I went to a pastor's fellowship. If you think church is bad, we went to a pastor's fellowship. This is tri-state. Kentucky, Ohio, and West Virginia. 3 states. You know how many pastors showed up for this meeting? They have it monthly. I think it was 5 of us, wasn't it? 5 preachers out of 3 states. 5 pastors. The preacher that got up and preached to us. And I hope that one day I can bring him here. His name is Jimmy Nichols. Jimmy when he was born, his daddy was a drunk. He run off from him and his mommy didn't want him, so she gave him away, and he ended up in a rest home. Not a rest home, a children's home. He had no life. He was just a kid, shoveled here and shoveled there and thrown out. But you know what? When he was 15 years old, he went to a Baptist church. He said, I don't know why. God does. And God saved his soul. After about 3 or 4 times, the preacher and everybody in the church, they went to him and they said, oh, Jimmy, it's good to have you here in the church tonight. Would you come back? Would you come back? Would you come back? And every time he said, every time I was only going out that door, never to come back. And he said, but something kept drawing him back until one night. He said he didn't run out the door. He ran to the front of the church and fell on his face and gave his heart. Now he's a preacher. He's got a son down at Pensacola Christian College, is trained to be a preacher. Jimmy, an orphan boy, last 2 weeks ago, I think 3 weeks ago now, he was preaching over to a football group of football players over right outside of Huntington. 12 of those football players gave their heart to Christ. Every place he's going, he's seeing results. Boys and girls are getting saved. Mainly of his testimony. I'd like to bring him in some Sunday, let you hear him on Sunday morning, Sunday night, with the possibility maybe of calling him in for a meeting. We need a revival, folks. We need somebody to come in here to preach to us and knows how to preach and get results. I want you to meet him. I fell in love with him and just meeting him for the first time. Father, as we come to you tonight now, I thank you. I thank you for the ministry of Madison.